Welcome to Leadership Journeys. I'm psychologist Leona Deakin, and I'm fascinated by leadership, what it takes to become one and what it means to be a great one. But I'm particularly interested in female leaders because they're rarer. As women and girls, we are often told that it is tougher to get to the top as a female. So what can we learn from those who've already done it? On this episode,
I find myself in rooms with female founders quite a lot, and they're definitely echo chambers. But then recently I had a very different experience. The last podcast I was on was with a business guru guy, and he was completely dismissive of it all. He was like, if you ever want to draw 130K, you need to make at least 5 million. I was like, you haven't listened, I'm not here to draw 130K from my baking business. I'm here to be the person I want to be, and that means working less, because otherwise there's nothing left.
Can you be a working mum and also a business success? Today on Leadership Journeys, we have a sweet treat in the form of Lisa Shepherd, co-founder and director of the Biskery, a company that provides kindness in biscuit form. The fact that Lisa and her co-founder Saskia took a great idea and turned it into a successful business is not the only reason I wanted to speak to her today. They also have a company mission of bringing more female qualities into the business world. So I wanted to find out why that matters so much to them and how they're doing it. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. What a nice intro.
Thank you so much. So the Biskery, that's been going since 2021, is that correct?
As a business,
As a business.
It was a glorified hobby for a long time before then. So we launched in 2016.
And so just tell us a little bit about what the business provides for your customers.
So we are essentially a manufacturer of branded and personalized biscuits. 80% of what we do is for businesses, so corporate orders, logo biscuits for events, launches, the lot, and 20% is for the end consumer. So we have a little web shop where people can buy biscuits for special occasions. So we do personalized boxes for birthdays, anniversaries, arrivals of babies, all of that.
It's super lovely. And you can even have your own face put on a biscuit.
You can. So that's another new arm of the business where we go to exhibitions and conferences as an extension of the sales team of the businesses that book us to be there. But like people would have branded water bottles or a coffee machine, and we print people's faces onto the biscuit to engage more people to the stand and keep them there for a bit.
I love it. The narcissistic side of my personality is just thinking I could just order loads of biscuits with my own face on it. Just to give it out to friends and family and just make them. I love that. And then there's a nice little link between you and I in that you say that the business started to take off for you really when Penguin Random House contacted you, and Penguin are my publisher as a writer. So that's quite nice. So just tell us a little bit about that. So why did that change the game a bit?
Well, Saskia and I started baking from home after our kids had gone to bed. So it was very much a hobby, and we sold our wares from a little market stall. But we had both a background in digital marketing, so we knew how to be found online on Google. And about a year into us baking at home in the evening, selling at those farmers markets at the weekends, we were approached by Penguin publishers. So they had found our website by Googling, I guess, branded biscuits. We didn't even really, I have no idea to this day, but they found us and asked if we could create biscuits for a book launch in Harrogate. And we said yes, had no idea how to do it. Found someone who could 3D print the logo they wanted on the biscuit and hand delivered to Harrogate. And we were like, hold on. So there's businesses who need this. 2, they find us. And 3, they trust us with their order. So, okay, so this is, all of a sudden opening a huge door for us. And I think that same year we made 3,000 biscuits for Amazon at Christmas, little gingerbread men with the iconic Amazon arrow as the smile. And that changed everything. So we then, obviously did our Google SEO magic to attract more businesses. And that's where we moved into.
Yeah, and that's when it started to feel real, presumably,
Yeah.
because suddenly you've got big brands.
Big
buying your
orders,
biscuits.
big order volumes. It was a lot more, we could streamline it a lot more because obviously if they
Yes.
order 3,000 biscuits, they don't want them the next week. We know we had months to do or weeks to make them. Until then, it wasn't a business, but then we were like, this could actually work, that there's something left at the end.
Yeah. And what I love about that story is when you said, we had no idea how to do it, but we just said, yeah, okay, we'll do it. So what was that conversation like between the two of you? Were you in a bit of like, did you think of saying no? Was that even considered, or did you just go for it?
We are the type of people who make things work. So we didn't do it on a whim going, no idea. And if it doesn't work, it's just going to be rubbish. It was like, we're going to make it work. We didn't totally know how, but we had confidence that we would find a solution, because that's very much the people we are, like problem solvers and solution finders. And we had heard of branded biscuits. We just didn't really know how to do it. It was more the time frame that we had, and obviously the jobs and the kids. And, if we'd had all day to research this, it wouldn't have been so scary. But, we made it work.
So there's a few things there that are quite intriguing that I think we'll delve into in a little bit. So you were saying the kinds of people you are, problem solvers, decision makers. So that'll be interesting to just get a bit of insight into. But then also I think the power of there being two of you. I'd be quite interested to just find out how that's helped. But before we do that, just take us back to younger Lisa. So when you were maybe late teens, early 20s, what were you anticipating your career might look like? Did you have an idea or not?
Well, funnily enough, when I was a teenager, I once said to my family I'd like to be a baker. And they totally nipped that in the bud. They were like, you're going to get up at 3 a.m. And they knew I liked my sleep. So that was like, okay. And, like you have to work really hard and you should go to uni because you're good at school and all of that. So they were having none of that. My first job then was in a bakery, but it was awful. Didn't stay there very long. So then I almost had no choice as going to university. But I come from a family, my dad's side, they're all doctors. My mum's side are more like social workers. And I didn't want to do either of those. So I was a little bit lost. And then I decided to just study what I fancied, what I really enjoyed, and that was languages. So that's what I did. And when people asked me what I wanted to do with that afterwards, I had no answer. I was like, I don't actually know. I just want to do this because I really enjoy it.
To also pick something that you enjoy rather than maybe what your family were directing you towards or influencing you towards. Because I think a lot of people do that, don't they? Where did the love of baking come from then? Why did you want to be a baker? Do you know? Can you remember?
I think so. I've always had a sweet tooth, but my mum doesn't. So there was no sweets in my house. She never baked. She baked for my birthday, and I loved that. So when I went to my granny's house, she always made cake. So there was always, my granddad still to this day has cake at 3:00. So he's the luckiest man alive. I was very much drawn to that. I guess it was the forbidden thing. Sugar and treats. And then for my 25th birthday, my grandma gave me a recipe folder with her most iconic bakes and other recipes. And that was such a gift. I loved that. And I think my love stems from that, something that I wasn't totally allowed to have or wasn't a big part. But then when I had it, it was just so special.
Yeah, and that kind of difference between no sweets at home and then Granny's house. When you
have another slice, like, yes.
Okay, so you went off to do languages. Weren't really sure where that was going to end up. So what did you do then? What was your job out of university or?
So when I finished uni, I kind of wanted to postpone that awful looking for a job, because it's hard for any graduate, I think, but especially for language graduates. So I said to my now husband, then boyfriend, that I'd like to just postpone that for a bit, and how about we go traveling? So we traveled the world for 15 months, and I just kind of parked I have to apply for a job at some point. And when I got back, I just applied. I opened Monster and all the job boards, and I just put in my languages, and I looked what was coming. I applied for jobs in Germany and the UK because my husband's English. And then I got a job offer for working in a digital marketing agency. They were looking for German speakers to look after the German clients, because their thinking was it's easier to teach a German speaker marketing than to teach a marketeer German. So they were desperately looking for German speakers who were happy to relocate to Leeds, and I was. So that's where my career really started, and I got like intensive training for 3 months. I learned everything about digital marketing. It was almost like a second degree. And my language skills were really handy, and also what I'd studied was more than languages, it was like communication, and so all of that all of a sudden made sense. And I could use it and apply it. And it was brilliant. I loved it.
Did you? I was going to say, did you enjoy it? Because that's something that you hadn't expected to get into and you just kind of followed your nose really a bit.
I mean, I loved it in the sense of how powerful it was. You know, we were doing the thing that we were taught, and all of a sudden our clients saw all these results, and it was like, wow, like I contributed to them having been so much more visible online. And they kept saying to us, what you're learning here is really powerful. It's really powerful. And we were like, yeah. So when we then started doing it for our own business, we had this in the back. I was like, oh yeah, let's just, but again, we just did the work, you know, we weren't like measuring it or anything, but it clearly worked because Penguin Publisher came after a year of us doing this. And today we're number 2 still for branded biscuits. If you Google branded biscuits, we're number 2, and it's little us, and you know, there's huge companies doing this.
It's quite amazing, isn't it? So how long did you do that for then?
8 years in the end.
8 years. So what did you learn about yourself over those 8 years, do you think?
I think I learned that I'm a good team player, that I am possibly a bit of a people pleaser. So I was always the one who wanted to make it work for the client and for my team, but I would speak up if I saw something that didn't work for me. I didn't like to be micromanaged because I had a lot of trust in my work and in my work ethic. So I remember once I had a manager who just constantly told me how to do things. And I was like, listen, I'm getting the results for the client. Just leave me alone. And I'm still like that. I think that's the bit I didn't enjoy working in, I think in any job, just having someone who, I don't mind someone pushing me or helping me to be better at what I am. But if it's, you know, for the protocol or, you know, tick boxes and all of that, I'm a bit of a free spirit. So that kind of suffocated me. I was like, oh, just let me do my job. Like, I've got this.
Yeah. So someone constantly checking up on have you done ABC?
Yeah. And, you know,
so it makes sense that you're your own boss.
For meeting's sakes. And, you know, like, can I just do my work?
And so how did it then transpire that you and Saskia decided, because she was there as well, is that where you met her?
That's where we met, yeah. So she looked after the Dutch clients and I looked after the German clients.
And you were telling me that you guys just would bake together just as friends, just after you'd had your children, is that correct?
Yeah, so we didn't really, we're both quite new to Leeds. We didn't have a big network of people, and we saw something in each other. We were kind of drawn to each other. We were both not big drinkers, and the team were, you know, young professionals. So every Friday they would go out, and after work they would go out for drinks. And Saskia had a baby at that stage. I didn't yet. We were like, let's do our own little way of socializing. And that ended up being baking. And it was just a way for us to do something. And that makes it then easier to share stories, doesn't it? When you do something with your hands, it feels easier than sitting there and, okay, tell me your life story. So we just naturally got really close and shared a lot of our story and what was happening in our worlds.
Can you remember who first had the idea that you could do something together?
So Saskia had a little apple pie business before.
Oh, okay.
And when she told me that, I was just totally, you know, when someone tells you something, you're like, that's amazing. Like, I was like, how? Tell me all about it. And other people were like, oh, yeah. But I was just so interested. So she was like, oh, yeah, I did this and I registered there. And then, so I was like, oh, let's do that. But it took me having a daughter to then actually make it happen. Until then, we were just messing around and like, oh no, it's not the right time.
So what was it about having your daughter that changed? Did that change the way you saw work or the way you saw yourself, or
all of that?
What did that, tell us about that.
I think it made me realize how precious and finite life is in a way. I think it's such a big thing to become a mother that I was like, I don't want to waste any second of this life anymore. And not that work was wasting life, but it wasn't totally inspiring. You know, it was a good job. I loved it in the beginning, but I guess the framework of the 9 to 5 was starting to grind on me, and I wanted to see my family when I wanted to see my family, and I couldn't because I had to take annual leave. And then at Christmas, they weren't sure if they could give us that leave if the whole international team disappeared. And maternity leave, you know, was like, it was a real struggle to find my place in the business after maternity leave. So they, for example, they wouldn't give me my senior title back because I wanted to work part-time, and they said I can't work client-facing anymore. And it just felt also unfair and very disempowering. And I guess essentially that's what made me put my energy into our own little thing, even though it wasn't something that was driving revenue at that stage or big enough. But it was just like my energy went there, and I guess slowly it started to, fire the coals in that little thing that's now the Biskery.
Yeah, that's lovely. But there's something there about your values, I suppose, bubbling up to the surface when you'd had your daughter. It was reminding me, I remember very clearly sitting with my daughter when she was very young and thinking, oh my gosh, I can never go back to work full time, because even when she goes to school, someone will have to drop her off and pick her up. And I'd worked in consultancy, it had been long hours, weekend work, and it had not crossed my mind until she was present and in my arms that this has just changed everything. And I think that is, although obviously becoming a parent affects the dads hugely in so many ways, but I think there's something fundamental about women and their work that is impacted, isn't there, by that, having that child and then being the kind of mum you want to be?
Yeah, definitely. Because in Germany, women get like up to 3 years off maternity leave, and they get a good pay. And, it's not a problem to do that. And here's obviously a year, 15 months, and then you really have to be back. So I only went back 2 days a week because I said, I'd rather take a massive pay cut than missing time with my child. And that almost positioned me then in what my priorities were. I was like, okay, we can make ends meet with me working 2 days and my husband obviously working full time. And that feels so much more right to me than kind of working that career. I was like, all of a sudden I was like, that's not important anymore. But I did have that, especially after a year or so. It's like there's more in me. I love being a mom. And when you asked me what I wanted to be as a teenager, I would have probably first said a mom. That was always my thing. I definitely wanted a family. But then there was this, okay, this is great, but there's this fire in me almost that needs an outlet, and work couldn't be that anymore.
And so we often hear that, it's such incredibly hard work to start your own business, to be the entrepreneur. You have to be all in and be prepared to give it your everything. And what's quite interesting about what I'm hearing in your story is this was a bit more of a value-based business. You wanted this to give you the freedom to have the life. So how did you achieve that? Have you achieved that, or has the reality been different to what you hoped?
I think looking at other businesses, I would say we've achieved it. So Saskia and I work school hours. We drop our kids at school, pick our kids up every day. We try to only work 4 days. Of course, there's some evening work and checking emails when the kids start swimming or whatever. But essentially, we have built that framework that we wanted. We can also both work from anywhere now. So in the summer, we might go to our home countries and spend time with our families. But then when there's a gap in the day, we sit down and work for 3 hours or, whatever needs to be done. So I think it's that freedom ultimately that we were craving that we have managed to weave into the business. It's not perfect. So there's definitely days where I fall short. I'm not the mom I want to be, or I'm not the business owner I want to be. And I am also starting to realize that's just life. We aren't perfect. And there's also no balance. I think what balance means is some days it swings that way and the other day it swings the other. But to be level is probably, happens maybe one day a year that actually you're winning in everything. Yes. So I think balance is more like looking over a longer period of time. It hasn't felt forced for us. And I think that is because we didn't have a business plan and we didn't have the big, revenue goals and how does it look when it's finished. It was just we need to build something that works better for us and our families. That was our main focus, and everything else came after. So to this day, that is how we hold ourselves accountable. We're like, is this working for us? And not from, of course it needs to work, is any money? Are we making any profit? Is there anything? Is there a bottom line? But it's also, how are we feeling? Are we the mums we want to be? Because we knew we couldn't work 80-hour weeks and be the mums we want to be. So we're very much challenging the notion that business owners, it's a 24/7 job and you can never switch off. And our kids force us to switch off, they deserve us to step away from it and go, shut down the laptop and go, this has to wait right now because they have something important to tell me.
I mean, it sounds so lovely. It sounds, excuse the pun here, but you baked in the idea of this being a family orientated occupation right from the start. So whereas people, as you say, might set financial goals or growth goals or, all those strategic visionary goals, your goal has been to make it work for the breadth of your life, for that bigger picture. Yeah. And that's something that you and Saskia keep revisiting from the sounds of it and keep checking yourselves against.
We do, because a working mum isn't a working mum because it totally depends on your circumstances, on the ages of your children, on what your children demand of you. So most of our team members are mums as well, but not one story is identical to the next. One team member is a single mum, so her challenges are completely different to the one who has one son, to the one who has two little girls. So, it's completely different. So it's ever changing. And that's, I think, the nature of business and life in general. But for us, it's very important to keep checking in of like, okay, is this still working? Is this still meeting why we set out to do this?
And have you faced resistance to that, just in terms of the practicalities of it, or even the business world at large, that you're coming at it from a different perspective? Has that provided?
Yeah, it's challenging. I think above anything, it's a massive logistical challenge to align everybody. Just think of school holidays, so we're always like half the staff are there over summer, but then summer is naturally a quiet time because there's not many events and lots of people are off, so they're not planning big events. So again, it works somehow. We've made it work, and we've got a little database of seasonal workers who can help us out. So again, I guess if something's important enough for you, you make it work somehow. The other resistance, I find myself in rooms with female founders quite a lot, and they're definitely echo chambers. So there's people nodding and going, oh, it's amazing. But then recently I had a very different experience. The last podcast I was on was with a business guru guy, and he basically analyzed our business and then told us what he thought afterwards. And he was completely dismissive of it all. He was like, you're never going to make this work. There's just never going to be a bottom line. I was like, hold on, but we are profitable. And like, yeah, but if you ever want to draw 130K, you need to make at least 5 million. I was like, who says I want to draw 130K? Almost like you haven't listened. I'm not here to draw 130K from a baking business. I'm here to have to be the person I want to be. And that means working less, because otherwise there's nothing left. I can't spread myself so thinly. It's not sustainable for me. And I don't think it's sustainable for anyone to work 80-hour weeks and have a family.
Yeah, and it's seen work as something that fits into that jigsaw of life as one part of it, rather than the kind of fuel. I think there's a lot of theories and approaches to business which is about the financial success, and that's
you can
all
measure it,
that we're looking at, because you can measure it, absolutely. But that whole idea of working to serve some other purpose, obviously we all need to eat and live, and we want a certain standard of life, so we all need the money for that. But I think what I'm hearing from you is this is about more than that. It's about that kind of feeding your soul a little bit, doing the things that you love with people you care about, so that you can have the family life that you want, and all of those things being linked.
Yeah.
Rather than the job being over there and then you come back and try and fit the rest of your life around whatever the demands of the job.
Definitely. Oh. And then also weaving that into what we're actually selling. So I think our biscuits carry that.
Yes, so let's talk about this, because this is lovely. So it isn't just that you started a business that fit in with the school runs and allowed you and Saskia to be great mums and to help other women have that flexibility. That's all wonderful. But the actual nature of the business itself, so this whole idea of female qualities and kindness in biscuit form, tell me about that. What's the inspiration behind all of that?
So I think we didn't realize the impact our biscuits had until the pandemic. So when we went into lockdown, Saskia and I looked at each other and we said, okay, there's no corporate events, so there's no money coming in. We have nothing to do aside from obviously homeschool the kids and do the other job, because we still had the other jobs at that point. But we wanted to do something with, to fill the gap we would normally use for baking. So we said, well, we're not key workers. We can't volunteer because we have the kids and we don't want to, put ourselves out there and risk anything. But we can bake and spread some hope and kindness. So we decided to launch something that we called Kindness Biscuits. They just had encouraging messages on them. So stay safe, missing you, hugs and kisses, thinking of you. And people could nominate someone they wanted us to send a biscuit to. Because we didn't have an e-commerce website at that stage. It was very much people sending us emails saying, I want this, and we would process it and send them out for them. So we then said, okay, just email us people and we send free biscuits out. And then we had a very kind donor who would pay for the postage. So we only had to, cover the ingredients, which isn't that expensive, and our time. And then I think Leeds List got wind of it in a Facebook group, a local Leeds Facebook group, and then the Yorkshire Post. And before we knew it, we got an email per minute asking for those free biscuits. And we were like, we can't sustain this anymore. We have, there's not enough flour.
Oh, of course, because actually we were supply of flour was, I remember now.
So yeah, we had to limit it. But the feedback we got was just so touching. So there were people saying, I sent your biscuit to my sister who works on a COVID ward and it made her cry and she felt so close to us. We have not been able to see her for 8 weeks. We're so worried about, just those human stories. And we were like, wow, this is powerful. This is just the biscuit, we thought. But it wasn't just a biscuit. So when the lockdowns were lifted and the world started to open again, we decided to keep it going somehow, because we said this has done something to us. This has shown us the power of how those biscuits can bring people together. So we decided to launch Gratitude's Day, which still happens now. So every Tuesday we have a limited amount of free thank you biscuits. So you can go to the website. It's not via email anymore. It's a bit more professional. So you can check out using the discount code that's displayed on the page. So it's all really visible, and send a thank you biscuit to someone and just thank them for whatever it is, including a gift note. And there's no strings attached. There's no hidden costs. The postage, everything's free. Just because we really believe in that, paying it forward. Because again, we love those human stories, but from a business perspective, what those kindness biscuits did for us is it established us as a brand that wants to do good. And people wanted to support us because of that. So when we said we have to limit the free biscuits, people said, oh, can I buy biscuits? We're like, well, yeah, the shop is open. So people went to the web shop, and at a time where the corporate orders were dead, we had a 400% increase of our B2C orders. And that's really what gave us the confidence to quit our jobs and say, you know what, if we can thrive in a pandemic when other people, so many businesses were struggling, then maybe we can just do this. And we did. So without these kindness biscuits, we probably wouldn't be here now.
It's lovely, isn't it? And it's making me think of Simon Sinek. Have you seen him talk about the power of why, and that whole idea of we buy because we have some emotional connection to a brand. It makes us feel a certain way. So like you say, to present yourselves as an ethical business, as a business that wants to spread kindness. And that leads us on to the feminine elements, because, in a business sense, being kind would be seen as a more feminine, stereotypically. Obviously, there's a plethora of kind men in the world, but it is seen as something that's maybe a little bit softer.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that's actually giving you a bit of an edge.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when we entered the business world, and what always has kind of put me off being part of the world of business was the notion that you have to, get your elbows out and make space for yourself and push everybody down and away. And we were like, there has to be another way. There's enough to go around. Look at how many chocolate brands there are out there. Why can't we celebrate our competitors and kind of establish us for something that we are known for, that isn't copying what someone else does, and not be afraid to also be a player in this field. And, how about us stand out for how good we are rather than for bad-mouthing the others? So again, I couldn't find any inspiration from many businessmen or women, because I found when women were successful in business, they just acted like men. And I thought that, why don't we embrace what we stand for? And again, I'm generalizing. I'm in my masculine energy a lot of the time, but then I have to remind myself sometimes, when I'm in the doing stuff mode, that like, hold on, just breathe, step back a moment. This is not how we do things here. We want to really like embrace that community and people over profit, even though we are profitable. It is important to us. And, we're not a CIC and we're not a charity. We kind of want to carve out this niche for women in business and say, hey, you can have financial success and build something that works, but you don't have to change who you are and what's important to you.
And so how have you done that? So how have you got in there and run the business without putting your elbows out and, pushing yourself in and getting into your masculine energy? How have you done it differently?
I think one is with the kindness biscuits. That was an example that other people would have said, it's exclusive now, we're charging even more because flour is more expensive. At a time where on paper it made no sense to give things away for free because we had less money, because there were no orders, and we had less time in a sense. So we were like, but that's what felt right. So it's very intuitive.
Okay.
So it's very hard to give you like, we did this and that. I think a lot of the time we just listen to what our gut told us and what we want to do. And a lot of the times it happened with our team members as well, that people came to us and were like, they're amazing, we want to work with them. One lady said, I have another job offer and they're paying me this, so I kind of have to go with that because that's the money I need to make this work. And we were like, okay, let's just crunch all the numbers. And we were like, again, this makes no business sense because we're paying her more than we can afford. But we know she's so right for the business and she can probably help us get to where we need to be. So let's do this because it feels right. And then we had another member of staff who came from Ukraine, and she said, I would love to quit my Ukrainian job that I'm doing remotely to kind of find my feet here in the UK. But I have to work full time to make ends meet. And we're like, again, it made no business sense to do that, but it felt right because we knew she was an amazing asset to the business and she could help us out in so many areas with her wealth of knowledge. So there's just so many decisions that where we switched off the head a little bit and went with the gut and put a lot of trust into things.
And has that worked out for you? Has that been a good... Because some people would say, well, that's a bit of a gamble.
Maybe. I mean, I say we switched the head off. We still, we have our accountancy, we have our accountant, we have a software. So we look at our numbers. So we're not like, oh, yeah, I'd love to do that. And, the castles in the sky. So we have that masculine energy side of, the spreadsheets and all of that. But I think it's easy to get hung up in that and just look at the figures, because sometimes stuff happens that you can't even explain. You speak to someone, you have a nice conversation, and 3 months later, someone comes to you and places a huge order, and it's off the back of that nice conversation you had. So I think you can't always measure things and go, if I do this, if I do A, B will happen. It's not as easy as that.
No, it's lovely. And what you're embodying, I suppose, is that whole leadership approach, which says if you look after the people will look after the work. And in so many corporate environments and kind of public sector organisations, the opposite is done. A little bit like you were saying about having the manager in that digital marketing environment who was checking up on the work, and you felt, well, you're just micromanaging me, the person, trust me, the person, and I will do the work.
Yeah.
But managers sometimes don't feel that they can. They're too anxious or nervous to leave the work to you and just look after you. And what you're doing is you're saying, well, we're fundamentally going to look after the people, even if it costs us on paper. We'll look after you because we think at some point in the future, you will realize that investment.
Yeah, exactly.
Something in you is going to contribute to that where we are.
Yeah.
And
so we saw that as an investment, and it's always
that's brave,
paid
isn't it?
off. Yeah, maybe. But we also felt we had no other choice because losing them wasn't an option. You know, they would have moved on and gone elsewhere and would have left a huge gap for opportunity. So it's always paid off for us.
Which again kind of counters that whole philosophy of, well, nobody's indispensable, which is quite a macho kind of businessy philosophy, isn't it? So you're doing the opposite. You're like, oh no, they are indispensable. This person, we want to keep them as an individual and they feel like a fit. And I think what's interesting, just going back to something you were saying earlier about the digital marketing company saying we want a German speaker because we can teach you the skills of marketing, which is easier. And I think often businesses miss that whole thing of if someone has your values or if someone has the right kind of motivation or the right kind of passion for what you're doing, well, you can teach them the technical bits of that, but you can't do that the other way around. They might be the most skillful technical individual, but if they don't share your passion, they don't share your values, you're potentially creating some disharmony, some conflict down the road.
Totally. Yeah, we've definitely found that. I mean, it's probably easier to say than if we were in a software business, but I don't think I've looked at any of my people's CVs. I couldn't care less. I'm like, you know, what are you doing here? You can learn in 3 months. What I'm looking at is how we all gel with each other. If you buy into our vision, if you're willing to, you know, put yourself into this for the hours that you're here and help us shift mountains, you know, in those 5 hours that we're in there, so that you can then go home and be with your kids and grow with us. Like that's what when we hired our first employee, we had just secured a little contract with a dark kitchen. So we were baking from the canteen of the old digital marketing agency where we'd worked, or we'd just quit the jobs. But we needed a stepping stone because obviously we needed to all of a sudden pay ourselves, pay for commercial premises and pay for a team. So that was a scary step. And we had a bit of a buffer in the bank because we had hardly paid ourselves in the first 4 years of this. But we only had about maybe 3-4 months to make it work. But we interviewed a few women and we all gave them a 10-hour job because they had young kids and they were like, oh yeah, that's kind of all I can do right now. We're like, that's fine because that's all we can afford. And then our motto almost was, you can grow with us. So as the business grows, as your children grow, as we grow as leaders, we make the right steps to grow this business and allow you all to increase your hours. And that's what happened.
So it's a real collective.
It is almost, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm interested because it does sound brave, some of the things that you've done and the fact you're doing it differently. How important has it been that there are the two of you, would you say?
Very important, yeah. There have been many, many moments where if it'd just been me, I would have given up, and Saskia as well. I think we didn't realize how aligned we are in terms of our vision when we first started this, because there's been so many moments where I was like, I need to have this really difficult conversation with Saskia now, and this might be the end. And, you know, a bit like sweaty palms type situation. And we would have the chat and she would say, I'm so glad you're saying this because I feel exactly the same way. And let's do this and this and this to change things. We give each other space. So every now and then one of us is like, I'm not the leader, person, mother I want to be. I need some space. And the other one goes, switch off as long as you need. So we've both had episodes like that where we disappeared for 2 weeks and just, avoided burnout probably, or like, you know, when you are, because we care so much about this. We might not put the 80 hours in, but we put them in our heads, you know. So to kind of just step away and go, remind ourselves why we're doing it. So that is just priceless to have someone who has your back fully. Then in the summer, she took 3 weeks and I took 3 weeks, and the business just, you know, it ran totally smoothly because there's always one of us there. So I couldn't do it without her. And, also it wouldn't be as much fun because we're really good friends and we just love each other's company, and we learn so much from each other.
Yes. And to give yourselves that confidence boost as well of having somebody walk in side by side with you. And there's lots of evidence that we only need one person to hold us in positive regard, to think our idea is good, to think our opinion is sound. And it has almost like a tenfold effect inside our brain.
Does it?
So that one person agreeing with you makes you more firm in your own opinion or your view or your own values. So it's interesting what you're saying. You know, it's like any relationship, I suppose, isn't it? Like over time, you and Saskia have learned that, oh, you're a bit more aligned. But also the fact you're doing this together is probably making you more aligned as well. And you're growing it together and you're reinforcing each other continuously.
Yeah.
Having that support and encouragement. So what would you say has been the biggest obstacle you guys have had to overcome in getting to where you are now?
I think the move from the home bakery into a commercial premises, I think that's what every kitchen table business startup fears, because how are you going to make that work? Because you need the money, but you don't have the money. So we managed that by obviously saving up, building it up alongside our existing jobs. So I would definitely, if that's possible, recommend that rather than going all in and fueling through your savings, because money is still coming in and it might take you a bit longer. But for us, that felt the right thing to do, because we're not, I mean, you've mentioned that we're brave, but we're not risk takers, I feel. Maybe we are more than we'd give ourselves credit for. But that was a big moment. There was also a few really annoying things like a lawsuit and a sewage flood and, things you just really don't want to do. And there's nothing in you that finds any fulfillment in any of it, but you have to, fill out the forms and do the phone calls. And I think as horrible as those experiences were, they made us grow as well as people, because you realize in those moments that you are the leader of this ship and there is no one you can pass this on to, and you need to, reassure everyone else that this is fine and that we haven't done anything wrong and that we are going to figure this out, and almost like, stay calm, because panic's not going to help. And so I think looking back, I'm probably quite thankful for those experiences, because I'm definitely a little bit braver. Maybe there's some scar tissue now that next time it won't hurt as much, because I'm like, I've healed once from this, so try me.
Yes, bring it on. And that's the essence of resilience, isn't it? That we can sometimes look at people who are highly resilient and seem to let things flow off them and think, oh, how lucky, like they were born with some, talent for stress management. But all the research tells us those people have usually just had tough adversity in their background and they're just ahead of us in the game. They've just got better skills, better tactics, and actually, like you said, just a healthier outlook in terms of, well, I survived. I've survived something before, and so I can survive something again. And that in and of itself is really kind of empowering, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
So going through these obstacles, albeit ones you would never choose to do, gives us something, doesn't it? It teaches us something, and that's what you guys have learned.
It does. And also, I think it makes you humble, because ultimately, again, we are in this business to build a better lives for our families and with our families. So our families were always fine, they were happy, they were healthy, they were safe. So it's just reminding you of what it all means. It's like, in worst case, absolute worst case, we lose this business. We can maybe start another one, or we can see what else is out there for us. But our families, it's really not that important. And it doesn't mean that I don't care for this business, but I'm also quite realistic of where it sits and what this is all about.
Yeah, and you clearly do care very much. I think that comes over. You're very committed to it and you're very passionate about it when you're talking about it, and your eyes are lit up, you're smiling, and you're very proud of it, and as you should be. However, the kind of compass for it is about that. What is it giving us lifestyle-wise, isn't it? which I think is where it's different
Yeah.
than what a lot of people would anticipate running your own business has to be. And some of the things that might put us off running our own business, thinking, well, I can't possibly do it with young children, because I wouldn't have the capacity or the time. Whereas you're saying, well, you just design it to suit.
Yeah.
Design it to suit and choose how to do it that way.
Totally. And there is no blueprint.
And you might have to be creative. It sounds like creative in your financial management, creative in your negotiations with the people you're working with. All of those things you're having to work out and untangle as you go. And you'd said something earlier about yourself and Saskia were problem solvers, I think you'd said. So tell me a little bit about that. So what is it that you've observed about you guys that's helping you, do you think?
I just think in my everyday life that is my job. I'm a problem solver. So my team come to me pretty much every day of like, oh, this has happened. What do you think? And I have to find a solution. And there is no, oh, that's so annoying. Oh man, I wish this hadn't happened. It doesn't help. I just have to get on and find the best solution. And so again, I think I wouldn't be this person if I wasn't a mum, because being a mum is you're also constantly problem solving. So I think we're doing such a disservice to mothers because they are limited with their time, the time they can give a business, but they can give businesses so much more, maybe in a short amount of time. But that resilience and that level of being able to problem solve and being pragmatic and thinking on their feet and quick, and I think that's something I've really just excelled at now I'm a mother. So when people told me you can't do this, I felt like, you have no idea what I can't do. I've already run a marathon. It's 8:45 and I just think of Saskia. She didn't have a car and she had 2 kids. So she dropped 2 kids at nursery and then cycled to work. And they told her off when she was 5 minutes late. And I was like, if they knew what she'd already been through, getting 2 kids ready for nursery. Her husband had to leave the house at 6 a.m. And I'm like, oh, this is so unfair. But I didn't want to be that person who complains and say this is so unfair. I wanted to be the person who did her own thing and did it my way and better. And now extend it to my team and go, I don't care if you're 10 minutes late because we're going to make the time up. And next time you're 10 minutes early. And, again, that trust and this is nitpicking they have no time and energy for.
Yeah. And the description of your leadership style is almost textbook of this kind of engaging leadership, which is actually those line managers and leaders who show us genuine concern, care about us, who trust us and enable us to do things for ourselves, to have the life we want, to build the skills and careers we want, who are honest with us and consistent and values driven. That these people, they not only improve our productivity and our motivation, so our energy levels, because we feel kind of liberated and supported, but they massively reduce our stress. And so all of that stuff people carry home, so Saskia's done her trip on her bike and she's dropped her kids off and then she's 5 minutes late. And I guarantee that night she went home, well, you know about that story. So her husband would have heard about that story, as would her friends and extended family, because it would have emotionally triggered her into thinking how unfair, how unjust, if only you knew. And I think the sad thing is, for some managers, even if they knew, they'd be like, well, get up 5 minutes earlier then. This is your job. Yeah. And you're tipping all of that on its head and saying, actually, no, care about people, look out for people, trust people, expect positive things of people, and then see what occurs as a result of that.
Yeah. And again, I think we're not doing this because we read all the books. I think it's because of our lived experience. Yeah. I knew how much I had to give, but I was told I couldn't. And I was like, but that's not true. I just can't work 37 and a half hours anymore. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
But how many people sit at their desk for 7.5 hours and only work 5,
How, if only we could research that, it would be very powerful. And I think one of the things we're hearing from quite a lot of the women that we're talking to is that kind of a bit of a fire in their belly, a bit of a, don't tell me I can't, or this isn't fair, I've got more to give, or, well, I want to live like this, or I want to work like that. And so there's something, that entrepreneurial spirit is coming from something quite deep inside.
Definitely. I think, what I definitely see when I'm in a room with female founders is that overcoming adversity and thinking outside the box and creating something that hasn't been there before.
Yes.
And trailblazing your own path.
I think that's the thing that's coming over most. There's lots of echoes of what other people might say about, do something that you care about, be passionate, look after your people, all those things. But I think I hear more than that in what you and Saskia are doing. I think I hear we want to change the world.
I'd love to change the world. Yeah.
If you could change those bigger organisations out there, those bigger corporates that are employing females or, dads who have responsibility for raising their kids, what would you want from them? What would you hope they would do differently tomorrow?
I would love them to change their priorities. I think they look at the bottom line, like how much money are we making, but they're not looking at how are we making that money? How many people are we fueling? How much mental health issues are we creating in ourselves and our team? What a burden are we on the planet? We could make so much more money if we didn't care about how we do things. We could use cheaper ingredients, plastic instead of compostable packaging, but we choose not to. So I feel, again, that we have a responsibility, and I wish that those bigger corporations that make all that money showed just a percentage of that responsibility. And part of me thinks they would probably be just as successful. It might just take a bit of time, but the people would be in a better place. And I think people make a company successful. If you have an army of people who are fired up and want to do this with you, then there's no reason why it can't work, unless your idea is rubbish, but then you wouldn't even probably launch it. So I feel there's so much in this shift of what's actually important, guys. Is it important that we all take the 130K paycheck, or is 60K maybe enough? And then we're all better people because we're more rounded and we're not totally at the brink of burnout and in competition with each other. So I think it's stepping out of that hamster wheel and trying to compete with each other and measure ourselves by our paycheck or the hours we work and look at what actually matters here.
Yes. So instead of sitting there for 8 hours but actually only working for 5, just think about doing something better with the 5.
Yeah.
Doing something productive with the 5.
Yeah. And doing some better with the 3,
Yeah.
Go home and be with your family or volunteer or make your garden nice if that makes you happy.
Yes.
But, just have something else. And Saskia and I say that all the time. Who's actually winning? Who's winning? Because maybe some investor is laughing all the way to the bank if you look at other businesses, but the little business owners and their team, and they're not winning.
No. And even in the public sector environments that I've worked in where there isn't any investors there making bottom line cash, you get that sense of, I'll often say to the people that I'm coaching who might be experiencing really high levels of stress, it's affecting their home life, it's affecting their career progression, and it's debilitating. And I will say to them, the organisation is never going to take its foot off the accelerator. It won't. It has to do the things that it has to do. That, it is serving its purpose, and it will keep that pressure on so long as we reciprocate. And so there's something incumbent on us as individuals to say, I'm going to take my foot off the gas and put in some healthier boundaries. Or a really powerful role line managers can play, saying, right, I'm going to ring fence this, and I am not going to let my people drive themselves into the ground, for the wrong reasons. And I think that's the kind of thing you're talking about. And you see it everywhere. People on this, they describe it as like a hamster wheel. I can't get off. I've got to keep going because everyone expects me to keep going.
But they're enabling it by doing that.
They're enabling it by getting on that. Yeah, so, it's a chicken and egg situation.
But
I think having more leaders, managers, entrepreneurs that are sort of flipping the priorities, as you say, it is potentially an extremely powerful way of changing the world, isn't it? And we always need someone to start it. So, you guys are out there doing it. How does it feel to be the baker that you wanted to be when you were young?
Again, how powerful, because what my parents told me is not true. They said I have to get up at 3 a.m. I don't. I choose to get up early sometimes, but I go to the Biskery at 9:30. I drop the kids at school and then I go into the Biskery. So which bakery opens at 9:30? Ours does, And the whole, you're going to be bored because you just do bread rolls all day long. No, like I'm doing a million things. And I'm not even baking as a baker, like not anymore. So I think, again, it's challenging what people tell you and maybe your own beliefs as well. So it feels amazing to now do what the 14-year-old me wanted to do. And she couldn't even see yet, but she just had some sort of love for baking and baked goods. And to now do it in a way that is enjoyable, because definitely the early mornings.
And that intuitiveness, that's linking, that's like a little thread through your character, isn't it? So many of the things you've done in your own business have come from that gut feel intuition, and that wanting to be a baker came from a bit of a gut feeling. So intuitive thinking is obviously one of your super strengths, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess, and being stubborn enough to, and also maybe patient enough to, because it took a long time, and other people would have said, where's the movement? When is this happening? And Saskia and I were happy just plodding along and seeing what happens. But we needed that time to grow as people and to really figure out what we wanted. Because for the
and it's like step by step, you're saying, isn't it? So you don't need to have this big strategy, this big plan, this big vision, that actually just doing what needs to be done next is enough to get you going, and actually probably very important in getting you going on something that's brand new and a bit scary.
It was important for us because that meant we could reply and respond to the demands.
Yes.
Because we started as a market stall and we had cakes and biscuits and apple pies. And it was nice, but it couldn't have got us where we're now. So then, we took all those decisions of like focus on the biscuits, personalizing them, shipping them, like all these things made it into what was then viable, because the market stands could never have really made a career out of that.
And so adapting as you go, not getting too anchored or stuck in your initial idea, like listening to the market, listening to your customers, listening to each other, all of those things are playing a big role.
Testing it, definitely.
It's fun. And so if you could go back to that 14-year-old, what would you say to her? What would you tell her?
I think I would quite say a lot to her, but it would all be around self-belief and trust and confidence. There was so many times in my life where I worried way too much about what other people would say. I think the time where I needed to hear that the most probably wasn't as the 14-year-old, because in the end I always did what I wanted to do. Like I studied languages and I went traveling, and I didn't worry about not finding a job so easily. So I kind of was more, I did a bit of a full circle. So I think now I am that person again. But I think the real dip was when I had my daughter, because I think that's such a vulnerable time in your life where you're just so out of your depth. And I think I lost myself for a little bit in that period. And the business was kind of bubbling. But I think I wasn't clear yet on what I actually wanted. And it took us a few months or years to figure that out. And it probably took a bit of a dip in my mental health to say, I can't do this business how I see business and be the mum I want to be and the wife I want to be and the sister and the friend and the daughter. And I was like, I can't build this beast, this all-consuming thing that so many business people describe a business to be. I'm like, I can't do that. That makes me ill. So that's very much when... So
how did you get past that? Because presumably it would have been easy to just stop then and say, I can't do it. It's not for me. I'll just go and get a job.
Yeah.
So why didn't you?
I think because I saw that actually had the potential to give me all of that, more so than an office job. I think I realized at that point that it was just me and my head stopping me from that, and my beliefs that business is this way. And then challenging that and going, how about it's not? How about I build something else? How about I weave what's important to me into that business? And I think that's what I would tell myself now, that you can create your own blueprint, and it won't be perfect and it might not work for other people, and other people will judge you and look at you and go, what the hell are they doing? But as long as it works for you, then and for my team, when I say you would, I extend it to the whole team and our clients to a certain extent, it is working for everybody who engages with the Biskery, and that's all that matters to me.
Yeah. And so going out and doing it your own way, but also it sounds like from that feeling of vulnerability of being the new mum, that you've allowed that to direct you as well in how you run your own business. Now you understand what that feels like. And so every other mum out there potentially is feeling that way, and lots of dads as well.
Yeah. And the first 3 people we hired, they were new mums pretty much, or they had just been through something where they felt very small. And I think we wanted to create a place almost like a stepping stone to kind of nurture them back up to their full potential and then go out in the world again and shine. And, you know, one of those women is still with us. And the other 2 have gone out and done that and found new places where that may be better suited. But I felt even with that short time we had together, we managed that, you know. We gave them the confidence of like, it's cool you only work 10 hours because that's all we need. And it's still really valuable for us here because that enables us to step away from the baking and do all this stuff that we've not done for years because you're here and bake for us. So, you know, even with a little unskilled job as baking, they made a real difference to us. And I think we don't value things for the right reasons sometimes. I think it's, you know, if you generate so much money or then it's valuable. But it's like, no, because you give me your time and that's your most precious good.
Yes. And the impact you then have on those people, like you say, their self-belief, their confidence, their peace of mind, how they feel about themselves in the world. It's making me smile because many years ago, myself and my then business partner, Christine, we were similar to Saskia and yourself, running our own consultancy. And one of the things we floated was the idea of offering career counselling or coaching to new mums, because we recognised that feeling that you just described and we thought we could maybe help. But the more we looked into it, the more we realised that actually that's one of those things where coaching is less powerful than people just going out there and doing it. Because when you want to build your own self-belief and confidence, you need to feel and see some tangible results from your efforts. So sitting and talking about it was never going to fill that gap. So we were like, we don't quite know how we do it. And so we parked it and never. And then I've met you and I'm like, this is how you do it, you see? So you've got these people to come in, you've given them purpose, you've given them flexibility, you've given them work, and presumably you have improved their sense of self and their self-worth.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful thing to do. No matter how many biscuits you sell, maybe that is the thing that you and Saskia will have the most powerful impact on.
Yeah. And you know what? I take that over we made whatever X figure.
I know. I can tell you would. Is there anything you would want to say to other women out there who might be thinking of doing something like you have done?
I guess similar to what I would say to myself, like don't stand in your own way. You know, if you just have a tiny little feeling in your belly that your idea has legs or that you would really enjoy it, even if you're not so confident about the potential success, even if you just feel, if you're drawn to something, then I'd say absolutely do it. And it doesn't have to mean quit your job and find an investor. Maybe you can do it 2 hours a week on the side and see what happens. And
just have a go. Start moving. And just see where it's going to take you.
Yeah. And don't worry too much about if you can find someone who's done it that way. You know, do what works for you. And I'm a huge believer that you make it work if it works for you, because you then do it for the right reasons.
Lisa, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your leadership journey with me.
Thanks for having me.
If you've enjoyed listening, don't forget to tell your friends, follow or subscribe. And if you leave me a nice review on Apple Podcasts before the 28th of Feb 2025, then you'll be entered into a prize draw where you can win a free career coaching session with me.